Welcome to Wildly Successful. I am your host, Petra Colson, a fellow business owner, a mum, and someone who has far too many ideas for my own good. On this podcast, we are diving deep into what it takes to build a business you truly love. One that brings not only financial success, but also the freedom to live a life that makes you genuinely happy. Join me as we explore topics such as business strategy, marketing, mindset, and everything between. You can expect actionable advice and real conversations with incredible business owners that will motivate you to take your business to the next level. So, if you're committed to building your wildly successful business, you're in the right place. Hello, and welcome back. I hope you are having a fantastic morning or day or night, whenever you are listening into this. I wanted to start off by asking you something. Have you ever sat down to create content, maybe for your social media or for your podcast or newsletter, and ended up staring at a blank piece of paper and thought, I have just no idea what to say? I have been there too. And that's why I'm so excited about today's conversation, because we are going to dive into a topic and word that gets thrown around a lot in business, which is strategy. For so many business owners, I feel like the word strategy can feel almost out of reach, like something complex, technical, that there is only one right way to do it. Over the past couple of months, a lot has happened in my world, and I've shared some of that here before. It forced me to take a step back from podcasting, and at first I thought that it was just because my plate was so full, and yeah, there was a lot going on. But my plate has always been quite full, and what I've realized was that I did have a gap in my ideation process and in my strategy. And every time I sat down to plan an episode, I would really struggle to come up with ideas that felt good enough to share. And all that shifted when I made a small couple of changes to my podcast strategy. And I wanted to share those with you today because these changes has taken me from staring at a blank page to mapping out almost 2 years worth of episode ideas that I'm genuinely so excited to share. Now, what you will notice is in today's episode, I am focusing mostly on my podcast strategy because that's what I've been working through recently. But everything I share applies to any kind of content strategy, whether it's your social media, your email marketing, or even your YouTube channel. So let's talk about what is strategy and how can you use it to bring more clarity and consistency and even conversions to your content, and why it might be that missing piece that keeps you from showing up the way you want in your business. Now, the Cambridge definition of a strategy is a detailed plan for achieving success. And in business, it's defined as the way in which a business carefully plans its action over time to improve its position and achieve what it wants. So, in very simple terms, a strategy is just a plan. It tells you what you need to do to get from where you are right now to where you want to be. So you need to know your starting point, that's where you are right now, and you need to know where you want to go, which is your goals. And then your strategy is simply the steps you take to go from point A to point B. Think of it like a road trip. Where are you starting? Maybe Brisbane. And where do you want to go? You might want to go to Sydney. And what route will take you there? Now, I feel like figuring out your starting point is often the easiest part. For my podcast, that might look like my current downloads, my current subscribers per week, my current leads generated from the podcast. And that's where I'm starting from. Now, the next step is to work out your goal and be specific here. If you aren't specific enough, you won't actually know when you've achieved it. So for me, that looks like by the 31st of December this year, I want to improve my podcast to X number of downloads, X number of weekly subscribers, and X number of leads. So if we go back to the road trip example, if we never picked Sydney as our destination, we just jumped in the car and we just kept driving, we would just drive aimlessly, really. We would be burning a lot of fuel and we wouldn't know when we have arrived. And I feel like business can feel the same if we don't set those really clear goals. And just to be clear, your end destination is not your final destination. This is something that used to stress me out so much when I was setting goals because I didn't want to limit myself with a single goal. But as soon as you reach Sydney, you can set your next destination. You're not stuck in Sydney. And the same applies for business. You can't reach 10,000 downloads before you reach 1,000. It doesn't mean that you don't want to reach 10,000. It just means that for now, you're focusing on the first goal or the first milestone. Now, after you have your goals in place, it's time to work out the steps and the details to get there. And here is the key. There is no one right strategy. Just like there is not only one route to go from Brisbane to Sydney, your plan is based on data and assumption. And I'm going to say that again. Your plan or strategy is based on data and assumptions. If we go back and look at the podcast goals that I set, say for example, one of my goals were to reach 1,000 downloads. I then want to ask myself, what do I have to do in order to get there? Because it is my actions and the steps that I take that is going to lead to the outcome, which is the downloads. So what do I need to do every day, every week, every month, whatever it is, in order to get to that goal in that timeline? Those actions or those steps are based on assumptions and data. And there's different type of data that we will base these assumptions off. Now, external data is exactly what it sounds like. It's data that is coming from outside of you and your business. It is looking at what is working right now, what's working for other people, what's happening in your industry, what have you learned from watching all those random YouTube videos. And the internal data is what has worked for you in the past. What do you know from your own business, maybe from the clients that you worked with? And the more data you have, the stronger your plan or your strategy will be, but it is still based on assumptions. It's still just based on previous data. That is why getting help from someone with experience can be so valuable, because you get to use their data, their experience to build a plan that is more likely going to work. They can help you prioritize your resources, your time, your energy, your money, so that you can focus on what will actually get results. So if we go back to my podcast strategy, here are the key details I needed to work out before I could create those action steps. I needed to work out, why am I doing this podcast? For me, this is a big nurture piece in my customer journey. Who am I speaking to? Which for me is service-based founders. What topics am I covering? I'm covering organic content topics, which is mainly podcast, YouTube, social media, and email marketing. How do I want my listeners to feel after each episode? For example, I wanted them to feel like they are inspired to take the next step. For example, launching their own podcast. The format I wanted to do, mostly solo episodes with some interviews. My content schedule, 1 episode per week, every Monday, analytics that I would want to hit by December 31st, my time and budget, how much will I invest in this, and then working out the steps I needed to execute or take in order to go from where I am right now to where I want to go. Now, the steps that I've added in my strategy are based on my resources, on the time I have to create this podcast. It's based on research I've done from what is working, external data, like I mentioned before, and internal data of what has worked in the past, what's working for my clients at the moment. And that is how I've created all of my steps that is going to lead me to my goals. I think it's really important that this plan or strategy doesn't just end up being another Google document that you forget about. I want to print this. I want to keep it on the wall next to me somewhere where I can revisit this weekly. Otherwise, 6 months down the track, I promise you, I will be making a new plan from scratch because I will forget that I created this one. And yes, I've done this so many times before. You want to make sure that this plan is something that can sit next to you because it is priority, you're focusing on it, and you are highlighting those to-dos that you need to take or your team needs to take in order to get to that end result. You also want to make sure that your strategy is as simple as possible while still being able to get to your results. Bigger projects may need a more detailed plan, but remember, simpler is usually better because you are more likely to take action on it consistently, both you and your team. So keeping it as simple as possible while still being enough oomph or enough meat or enough detail for you to be able to know the next steps or the steps that you are taking to get to your end result. I feel like it's also worth saying that your plan won't always go exactly as expected. And I'm sure you've experienced this before, but just like a road trip, you might hit traffic or roadworks and you have to take a detour and things might take a little longer than you thought, and that is so normal. As founders, our job is to keep working out where we are, where we want to go, and the best way to get to there with the resources that we have. And probably the hardest thing if you are a visionary and someone who has many great ideas, but it's focusing on one road trip at the time. If you are halfway through a journey, but you're already thinking about the next, you will never enjoy it in the moment. You will always be chasing that next thing instead of appreciating the progress that you are making right now. I hope that this has helped you think differently about creating a strategy for your content, and I hope it's inspired you to sit down and work out where you are, where you want to go, and the best steps to get there. And here's my challenge to you. Don't do what 99% of people do after they finish a podcast, which is nothing. Be the 1% that takes the next step. Even if that next step is just allocating a time in your calendar to map out your content strategy. All the best. Thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you in the next episode. Bye for now. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you've enjoyed this conversation. If you did, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next week. Bye for now.